strategic area has been compromised. Area is uncontrolled. We need you to lock it down.
Copy that.
Hey everyone, and welcome to ObsessedGames versus The Collectors. And I know, it's a little bit zany given my track record with The Collectors, because if you've been watching any of the multiplayer sessions with myself and Mike where we decide to go up against The Collectors, it never ends in our favor. And really, I think that's putting it lightly. We tend to be in a bit over our heads. And I'm uploading this because, well, I don't know. Somehow I managed to do it. Somehow I managed to go against The Collectors solo and come out on top. So I was recording this clip for a project that's coming up. Hopefully you guys will see it up soon. It's taking a lot more time to do than I originally anticipated. Then again, I should have been smarter about this because, well, it involves going through a lot of multiplayer, and each session tends to last around 20 to 25 minutes if I'm winning. If I'm not, then it's gonna take like 5 minutes and I'm dead. Anyway, I shan't say any more. Basically, it's taking a lot more time, and that's one of the reasons why this is up, because I need a bit more time to get that project completed. And also, I was just really proud of the fact that I soloed The Collectors and won. I mean, let's be honest here. There are people who upload videos on YouTube where they'll go up against The Collectors solo and on the hardest difficulty. This is just on bronze. So, by no means am I saying I'm an amazing gamer that I can go up against the world. Nope. I still maintain that I am a terrible gamer. I'm just really happy with myself, and I think I'm allowed to be happy with myself when, essentially, every time I go up against these guys, I fail. So, I'm also going to spend the next 20 minutes basically just talking about whatever comes into my head. One of the things I wanted to talk about is multiplayer on this game in general. In Mass Effect, as you guys know, if you've been watching my campaign, or if you've played Mass Effect before, then you know that you need to complete Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. I say complete. You need to go through it enough to bump up your readiness rating in the solo player campaign until you get to, ideally, 100%. Not entirely necessary, but it helps. It really helps. I think you could probably get away with 75-80%, which is where I am at the time of recording this, but if you guys know me, you guys know I like to do 100%, otherwise, there are too many variables. There's too much that can go wrong, and by too much, I mean like 0.01%. That's too much for me. Can't do it. Can't do it. Anyway, I wanted to just kind of talk about how you guys can go into multiplayer by yourself and still come out on top. I've been doing it mostly against Cerberus because Cerberus tends to be the easiest enemy, and you know, everybody's used to fighting Cerberus. They're mere mortals, as Mike likes to call them, so they're relatively easy to deal with, and you can reasonably easily, depending on the level, take care of them without too much of a problem. Get the next level up, Reapers the next level above that, and Collectors on top. And one of the reasons why I wanted to upload this, besides tooting my own horn, is to show that even somebody like me, and if you've watched the other multiplayer sessions, you know I miss a lot of shots. In fact, you'll probably see it throughout this recording. I miss a lot of shots and I make a lot of mistakes. If a gamer like me can get through this against the Collectors and win, so can you. So can any of you. You guys can do it. I have full faith in you. Yes, I am technically doing this with the level 20 character, and that does really help, but still, the point still stands. So yeah, basically I wanted to lead into tips and techniques that I've kind of discovered for myself that work for me in multiplayer. I'm sure there are tons of people who have got their own tips and tricks which work for them, and they may work for you, and so my tips might work for you. And one of them is just basically, if you're gonna go into these levels solo, I would say focus on leveling up your character. And don't worry too much about losing, because even if you lose in any of these games, you still do get readiness rating points. You still build up your percentage. It's not quite as much, but it's still a bit, and every little helps. I mean, sometimes if you're doing a whole bunch of 10-minute rounds or 10-minute games, that might be more efficient than having to go through the entire 20 to 25 minutes and only get a certain amount of a percentage boost. You know, I need to do the math on that sometime. Has somebody else done the math? If you have, let me know, because I'd be really curious if it's more efficient to lose at a certain point and get a fraction of the percentage, but it might be a better use of your time. That's really interesting to consider. Anyway, something that I'm pretty sure probably every gamer knows, every player knows, is kiting is your friend. Kiting is a godsend, especially when you're by yourself with a massive horde of enemies on your tail. Basically, the way the spawning works, and as far as I've noticed, I don't fully know, but as far as my observations go, you can camp out in a location and then the enemy will spawn to the left and to the right of you, and if you keep moving around, you can kind of use that to your advantage, because there's always going to be a location where it's empty, because every enemy, every AI is going to try and find you and go towards your location. So if you stay in one location, they're all going to go towards you. Then you just run to the other side of the map, and hey, it's a lot more clear. And I have lost my train of thought because I had to open the door for trick-or-treaters. So we're just going to move on to the next point. It's a good idea to stick to one map when you're starting out, because that way you can learn the lay of the land. You're going to get really familiar with all of its weak points, all of its kill zones, and great places to kind of camp out and hide, as well as, most importantly, where all of the ammo boxes are, because one of the things you should have as a character is grenades, and grenades are going to be so helpful when you are by yourself, because you can chuck a grenade and still use your power, or when your power is recharging, you can chuck a grenade. It's really helpful because you increase your damage per second. But unfortunately, you only get so many grenades, so you have to learn where those ammo crates are so you can pick up more. That being said, though, you're going to want to use them against harder to deal with enemies, although the exception with that is when you're kind of caught in a bind, when you're backed into a corner and there are a lot of just low-level enemies surrounding you and making it really hard for you to make your escape. Aim at the ground, chuck it, and it'll just blow them away, and then you can make your escape. That's a great technique to do, but aside from that, I would say I would be a bit more cautious with them from about the 5th wave onwards. Before that, by all means, go ham and just, you know, make it rain grenades. Make it rain so many grenades that the enemy decides, you know what, we're just going to end it here and run away. However, once you pass wave 5, then you're going to start dealing with the heavier enemies. Like with Cerberus, you're going to start dealing with Nemesis, you're going to deal with Phantoms and Atlases. Atlases are really the only main ones that you want to use grenades on, although it really does help using grenades on all of those smaller enemies. But if you know you've got an Atlas in that round, and they're going to show up pretty early, I'd say save your grenades for the Atlas and then deal it out to all of the other enemies. With collectors, it's kind of a different story, because pretty much every heavy enemy you get, you're going to want to use your grenades on them. But this is all stuff that you're going to get used to when you play the game more and you start getting used to the rhythms of the enemies and what they start to throw at you. So speaking of these bigger enemies, this is where we kind of go back a little bit to kiting, because the bigger enemies, though they deal a lot of power, they tend to be a lot slower than all of the infantry and all of the other smaller, easier to deal with enemies that surround them. So if you're kiting all of your enemies around, what you can do is kite them to the other side, and all of the smaller enemies will follow you, and you won't have to deal with the big bad enemy at the same time. That leaves you the opportunity to pick them all off whilst that big guy is still chasing after you, and then he's all alone, he's all by himself for last. And that just makes him a ton easier to deal with as well. Alright, so far, just to recap, I know we're only like halfway through the episode, but just to recap, kiting is your friend, learn where all of the ammo boxes are, because ammo is your friend, grenades are your friend. I'm clumping that into learn the lay of the land, as well as basically isolate those big bad enemies by dragging and kiting away the smaller enemies, so that you only have the big enemies to deal with when they're alone and when you don't have lots of people shooting at you at the same time, because really you want to concentrate all of your firepower on those giant enemies, and having lots of people shooting at you, that's just going to be really annoying. It's going to wear down your shields, and you're probably going to get killed if you're honest. If I'm honest, I should say. Okay, with that quick little recap done, let's move on to the next section, which is the difficult topic of these side missions, those side objectives that you need to complete in order to finish the level, really, such as the escort mission, going around and uploading data, and hacking for, yeah, it can be a pain, it can be a real pain, especially on those harder difficulties. It's kind of hard to give advice for these. Really, I would suggest just going straight for it as soon as you know your objective. However, if the heat starts to build up, then it's perfectly okay to back up, to run away, and pick enemies off until a later point when you can complete the objective. Just always be in mind of the timer in the top right-hand corner. Generally, if it starts getting down to 2 minutes, you need to start doing the objective. So you have until that 2-minute mark to go kiting all of those enemies around and picking them off one by one. And the good thing is, once you've kited them all to the other side, you can go back and complete your objective, or at least complete a smaller stage of it. You can always go back and forth between kiting them, doing your objective, kiting them, doing your objective. However, if you can get it out of the way straight away, right at the beginning of the round, do it. Definitely do it, because it is just one less thing you have to worry about. And sometimes things just work in your favor that way. It's weird, but it does. By the way, whenever I say kiting, I also mean running away. And whenever I say running away, I also mean kiting. In this kind of scenario, because all of the maps are pretty much... they seem to be giant circles off the top of my memory with through points in the middle. So, you got a giant ring on the outside and lots of ways you can cross through the middle to get to the other side, or double around. And I hope I'm painting a good enough picture. So basically, if you're running away, then you're inadvertently kiting them as well, because they're going to be chasing after you after all. And really, there are only a few ways they can go. Although, that being said, while this advice kind of goes over from soloing missions like I am in this video to actually having your friends playing with you, or even just going onto a match online and playing with a bunch of strangers, really, ideally, kiting and running away, they work best when you're working together as a team. I know that sounds stupid, but oftentimes when you're playing online with a bunch of strangers, then they're kind of going to be running around all over the place. Which, I mean, is fine, especially if you're all level 20s. However, if you find yourself getting swamped and you need to run away together, because if you spread out, really, it's not going to do too well for one or two of those players, because the AIs are going to crowd up on one or two of those players in particular. If it's two of you, then really it's a lot easier for the AI to span out and conquer both of you than if you successfully kite to a different location, because that way chances are the enemies will tend to take a singular path, you know, the path of least resistance, or as the crow flies, as the saying goes. They're going to try and go straight towards you. If you go in separate directions, that's just going to cause them to fan out, and that's just going to make your life a bit more difficult. So, fight as a team, guys. Assuming, you know, you have a team. If you're going solo, then, in a way, that kind of balances out. It makes things a lot easier. On the one hand, you don't have someone to watch your back. On the other hand, kiting is a lot easier. And, alternatively, running away is a lot more effective. Again, though, these are kind of just personal observations from what I've played. You guys could experience something totally different, and somebody else online might say... they might give a completely different list of tips and tricks and techniques, which can still work. Just because one person gives one set of techniques and another person gives another set of techniques that are totally different, doesn't mean that both sets aren't going to work and they aren't going to mesh, because you just got to find out what works for you. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was your D-pad, or your support options. As you'll notice on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got up on the D-pad, which, you know, brings out the rocket launchers, right on the D-pad, which brings you back up to full strength in health and shields. Down on the D-pad, which is, as I'm sure you're all very familiar with, your Metagel, which brings you back from the dead, and then left on the D-pad, which gives you more ammo. Generally, you don't need left on the D-pad unless you're playing on a harder difficulty with a lot of people. However, the other three are crucial. Let's start with the rocket launchers. Rocket launchers, as a general rule, I always save those until the end, because it just makes things so much easier when you're trying to fend off hordes and hordes of enemies. If you spend them all earlier on in the game, then really you're gonna be in a bit of a bind when it's the hardest level and everybody is trying to gang up on you. Next up, we're gonna go with the protection pack and the Metagel. I can't remember what the right on the D-pad is, but I'm gonna refer to it as the protection pack because it brings up your health all the way to full HP and your shields all the way up to top again. Essentially, my tip is to try and focus on using those protection packs first. When you notice you are critically in danger of dying, go ahead and use the protection pack, because really it's of no use to you when you go down on the ground. Then you have to use a Metagel, and you want to save those for as late in the game as possible when you're more likely to get knocked down and you're less likely to have the reaction, the opportunity to hit those protection packs. If you've watched along with myself and Mike as we go through all of the different multiplayer levels, then you'll notice that anytime we essentially dispense with our Metagels earlier on in the game and don't save them for as late as possible, generally we tend to lose those games because we're going to be in a bit of a bind later on, dealing with all of the harder enemies, with all of them converging on our escape points. And we're essentially not going to be able to revive ourselves. We have to rely on each other, which it's really hard when all of the enemies are converging on the same location. It's hard to pick each other up when, you know, all of that fire is concentrated on you. Which also brings me to my next point, funnily enough. If you are playing with friends or with a team, again, let them pick you up if they have the opportunity to, instead of using the metagel. Save the metagel for as late in the game as possible, because it will be so much more helpful later on than earlier on. I mean, which would you choose? Spend a resource which could be valuable, or just have a friend come over and pick you up? I'd go with the friend, because your friend's going to pick you up an unlimited amount of times unless they're down, in which case, then it's okay to use the metagel. Alright, so we're moving on to what is essentially my final tip or technique or whatever it is I've been giving you. Advice, I suppose. Things that have worked for me in multiplayer. When it comes to that final round and you've got to get to the extraction point and secure that location and hold off against hordes and hordes and hordes and hordes of enemies, don't do it. Do not go to the extraction point. Basically, it all ties back to running away and kiting. Go to the opposite side of the map, because that way all of the enemies are going to converge on that location. Essentially, you've got to hold off for a few minutes, and in those few minutes, they're going to go onto the opposite side of the extraction point, leaving it open for you and a lot easier for you to defend in the last 30 seconds. I'd say once it starts to hit 30 to 20 seconds, run through the map, get to the other side. Potentially more like 30 to 40 seconds, because there are some rounds where you'll notice that even though you go to the other side of the map and you're trying to hold off that area, you realize it's really very easy to hold it off, because a lot of the enemies, for some weird reason, aren't going towards you. They're defending the extraction point. So, you're gonna want to, if you're in that situation, then yes, slowly creep up on the extraction point when it starts hitting a minute to go. So you can try and pick them off from a distance. They'll start moving away from the extraction point, and then in those last seconds, charge into the extraction point, and hopefully, if everything works out okay, you won't have to worry about your health or your shields in those last seconds as the shuttle comes in to pick you up. Okay, so I think that's all of my... I was about to use the word wisdom, but I don't know if I can qualify it as wisdom. I think that's about it for all of the tips that I've learnt and techniques that I've learnt throughout my time playing the multiplayer. I hope it serves you well, and if you guys have any more tips and techniques, feel free to share them in the comments below, because that way other people can read this and go, huh, that's useful. I might start doing that if there's anything I've missed, because I'm pretty sure I've thought of everything that I use, but of course there are going to be tricks and secrets that other people know that I have no clue about, and those actually might be kind of helpful for me too. Ooh, actually, I did think of one just off the top of my head. Weapons, when you're buying those upgrade packs, those Spectre packs, equipment packs, whatever, to keep yourself, you know, fully topped up on the best gear. I'd say pick one of those packs and keep sticking with it, because essentially, if you stick with the most basic pack, and there's nothing wrong with that, you can get some good weapons out of the basic pack, then you're going to start getting the next tier, the level 2, the level 3, the level 4 of the same weapon, and that's really great. And it's better than, say, saving up a ton of credits from these games and blowing it all on the Spectre pack or the Jumbo Equipment pack. Or, actually, no. Buy money, spend money on the Jumbo Equipment pack, because that's what gets you your metagels. Anyway, I'm referring to the packs that actually give you weapons and characters and so on and so forth. It's a lot better to have a common weapon that is, say, level 5 than a super rare weapon which is only level 1. Generally, that's the case, or at least as far as I've experienced, considering a lot of these drops are random, which is, you know, that's kind of the norm. But considering you're only getting a certain amount of credits per game, it's going to be a lot easier to afford a lot more of the common items. After all, I think if my math is right, I mean, it's approximate, but you should be able to get maybe 2 or 3 of the common packs for the super rare packs. So, you know, if you're playing the weapon lottery, I guess it would be, then you're a lot more likely to actually catch a break if you're buying a lot more tickets, or packs, so to speak. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that's it. I'm pretty sure that's all of the advice I can pass on from my experiences. So, we're gonna call it here. We're gonna put on some sweet music, hopefully, if I can find something I like, and I shall bid you adieu. Have a good day, guys.
but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side.